Mr. Brady, we're, I think, at an exciting time with our college and career readiness, and now addressing the third leg in the curriculum instruction and assessment element of things. So what can you share with us in terms of details about this new assessment system, and what is it going to mean for students?
Frank, thank you very much for this opportunity. I think it's absolutely critical that we get the word out to parents and to our staff. This is a very important change that will impact students. And unless it's carefully explained and understood, it could easily be misrepresented. And there would be unnecessary angst associated with that. So let me thank you for the opportunity to talk about it, number one. Number two is, I am so pleased that we have gotten so far in the implementation of the college and career ready standards. Absolutely terrific. A combined team effort on the part of everybody in DoDEA and parents and our students. And I'm very, very delighted to see that progress. However, you don't know how far you've come until you can really measure that you've come that far. So to do that, we have to do assessments. And we've been down this road in public education before. Outside the gate, as we like to say, in other public in public school districts that our students go to and will go to as a PCS from place to place, that in a zeal for the implementation of the standards, the assessments came almost immediately after. And that's an approach, but you learn from approaches, and it was clear to me that DoDEA, for our teachers and our parents, it wasn't necessary to immediately begin an assessment system when we were already instituting the standards. And I wanted to take away the angst and the threat to that, but at the same time, we have to have vehicles to measure, to see how well we're doing, to see how well our students are doing. So we're in the process of the measured approach, and it's called the DoDEA Comprehensive Assessment System. And so let's factually approach that. Are the benchmarks assessments going to change? Absolutely not. We'll continue to have the SAT, the PSAT, the ACT, and the AP tests that everyone is familiar with. We're not changing those at all. But what we are adding is two really interesting dimensions. Number one is we're going to automate it. And number two, we're going to have three elements of that assessment. The first, of course, is the diagnostic, which teachers can use almost on a daily basis to see where the students are in their journey to understand, to measure what they know in terms of the standards. The second is the interim assessment. And the third is the summative assessment, or the end of year assessment. So we're in the process of rolling out the diagnostic. We're going to begin, and again, we're doing it in measured ways. We're going to have 42 schools begin this effort in February. The 42 were picked so we would have a diversity across the world, and all sorts of IT environments to make sure that the tools that we use are in fact responsive, and we can perform that mission. It'll allow the teachers to evaluate the results of that, and it also gives us that test bed so that when we do roll it out to the entire DoDEA across the world, that it works properly. The worst thing you can do is have a student be prepared for a test, go to the computer or the Chromebook, and not work. I've seen that too often. We're not going to have that, so we're going to make sure that it's appropriate. So we're doing the interim assessments. We'll have the summative rolled out as we go forward. And I just think it's a marvelous feedback mechanism for our hardworking teachers to measure where their classes are and to individually measure the student. And then at the end of the year, we'll have a good idea where everyone is in the assessment of the college and career ready.
Assessment isn't really a new concept for parents or for students, but what are the differences between how we used to assess and what the DoDEA Comprehensive Assessment System offers?
I think that's a great question, Frank, and I want to make sure that our parents understand that we have been assessing students. This is just it's a shift, and there's two elements of the shift. The first is that we used to use something called the Terra Nova, which was a norm reference test which compared students to how they performed with other students. And it really doesn't hit the mark in terms of measuring where we are in college and career ready standards to a norm reference test. And so we will no longer use the Terranova. Instead, we will substitute a comprehensive criterion reference test, which actually measure how the student's doing to standard, not to each other. And I don't think there's anything to be concerned about there. Our students do remarkably well, and we can see progress. In fact, I think it's a much improved in the sense of we'll be able to diagnose and see where they are before they get to that point. So that's shift number one. And shift number two is, I briefly talked about before, is the shift to automation and the automated support associated with that. So I think as a parent, you'd have to know that the baseline continues, the SAT, the ACT, the AP tests, those are there, not going to change those. But we are moving from something called the Terranova, which was a comparison of student to student, to a more objective, how your student does against those standards. The other issue that parents would be concerned about is, so now that we have the data, what do we do with it? But we are taking a phased approach to that too. So in other words, it's not going to be at the end of the year for the first year when we measure mathematics and literacy. If a student doesn't get to a certain point, then they can't graduate, or it would impact their career, academic career, would influence and impact on the teacher's evaluations. We're not at that point yet. Right now, we are just rolling out an assessment system that we will make adjustments to as we go forward, and do the proper things with them. But at this point, it's a step forward, and I think it's the right step forward. But again, we're not jumping to conclusions and dictating at this point what it means to the students and the parents.
A deliberate approach.
Absolutely, deliberate approach, and we have time to measure it and roll it out properly.
You mentioned summative assessments. Why did DoDEA move to the summative assessments, and what is the benefit for students in doing so?
It's critical to us that students are measured objectively to their knowledge of the standards. That's absolutely critical. So this gives us an opportunity to do that. And it measures real world problem solving. It measures critical thinking. And those are an important aspect of how we have mastered the standards. It gives real-time feedback to teachers so they can adjust as they go through the year. And I just think it's a much better approach to tell us as a system how we are performing for our students and how our students are performing objectively to a standard.
So this whole process has been, it's not been a long process for it, but it's been deliberate, as you've said.
Yeah, well, I think, Frank, that's the key to success. As we look at any system, particularly in the public school systems where we change to standard-based and we change to how we assess students, there's a couple of ways to do it. And I think fast, do it quickly. I'm not a big fan of that. I think it has to endure. It has to be systemic. To do that, you have to have the proper preparation. You have to have the professional development associated with that. You have to have the curriculum materials. You have the teachers to understand and be supportive. And then you roll it out to parents and students over a period of time. You do it by subject matter, by different grades. I've seen some states take on the entire standards, K-12, and every subject in 1 year, and then immediately have the assessments. I think we need to learn. I think what we need to do is a measured, and I think we've been remarkably successful so far, and that's all from the hard work of the administrators, the teachers in the classroom, the instructional assistants and support folks that are out there helping them, and equally important, if not more so, is parents' understanding and students' ability to do as well as they do.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else that our parents or our teachers ought to know as we move forward with this?
Just once again, I think that they are. We are in a unique position to prepare our students to achieve remarkable student success, achieve academic success, not only in DoDEA, but when they go anywhere else in the public school system in the United States. And so I certainly appreciate the support, and I just think it's only going to get better.